Merci beaucoup, Grace, pour cette...
Thank you, Grace, for your comments. What's incredible is that we see that there are people who have had their liberty restricted and have been attacked. We see them fighting with great fervor, with great enthusiasm. And we'd like to thank you all for fighting and would encourage you to continue and to spread this enthusiasm. I'd like to read you something from a Chinese paper which, to justify a weight of repression, saying that since the end of the year, of last year, certain countries in the Middle East and other countries have had a number of upheavals. And we all are aware that happiness is stability and chaos is disaster. We should be aware of the fact that there will always be some people who will complain about problems that exist and to incite people to disorder. End of quote. Now, in your countries, have there been official declarations like this in the press? Asking you not to react and not to listen to the revolutionaries in your countries? Do you have other examples of this type where we see the governments are afraid of contamination, of this fervor spreading? Who would like to answer this question? In Vietnam now, young people above all, and in different organizations, there have been calls to protest. The police are in front of their doors and they can no longer go out. And every day they're trying to prevent them from going to demonstrations or protests. In the case of Venezuela, in the last 12 years, 150,000 people have been murdered. And the government says that that's a perception of insecurity. And behind this perception of insecurity, there is basically, this has been called by the press. The press has worked to destabilize society, and the press is responsible for this. And Chavez has supported by 80% of the people, and that the press must be controlled. And in your view, what are the greatest challenges to the freedom of expression and education in your country? And information in your country, rather?
Broadcasting especially, we still have a government monopoly, and the issue of hate speech is still going on. So you find that right now there's a concerted effort to demonize leaders of the civic and political opposition. You have senior members of the ruling ZANU-PF party. I was trying to find the quotation here right now of one of the former ambassador for South Africa, who is in the top hierarchy of ZANU-PF, actually saying something to the effect that we will kill them. It's the kind of language that you have by senior government officials who do so with impunity. Then you have the state-controlled papers. Of course, they, on a daily basis, are dedicated to publishing hate speech, hate articles that are meant to demonize the opposition.
And Nguyen, vous voulez rajouter quelque chose?
I'd like to add anything. Now in Vietnam we're trying to overcome our difficulties now, not to be afraid, and to use internet as much as possible And we're calling upon our people to use internet to disseminate information, news about our struggle, and not to throw in the towel when we're faced with all this repression. Thank you. We'd like to use the last few minutes to see if you have any questions in the hall. I don't know if you've written questions on pieces of paper, if you've given these papers to the staff. Are there any questions? So I'll take questions from the floor. Sir, would you please introduce yourself and speak? And I'd make it brief, please. These are questions. Just 1 minute, please. These are not statements, just questions. Thank you.
I represent the Institute for Jewish Research in Canada. I'd like to address one point to Miguel. As you know, in just about 1 block from Miami Airport, there's a satellite internet store that sells about 1,000 dishes every month to Venezuelan, either expatriates or citizens, for internet access. So using proxy servers in Venezuela, there's a large community still able to access non-government blocked firewalls through Venezuela. And to Grace, my question here is to you. Do you think that we can see a Shona-inspired, I don't want to use the word revolution, but certainly a Shona-inspired uprising of the people, similar to what we've seen in the Middle East, based on Twitter and Google, given the fact that today with proxy servers, there is internet access available for all citizens, provided they can get access to these servers. What are the chances? And I address the same question to Miguel as well. Thank you.
Bueno, cuando cerraron en 2007.
When in 2007 they closed down Radio Caracas channel, there was a 30% coverage of the population, and the population changed to a satellite and catellite television, so that paid television had to go up to 70% to be able to program freely, and the government interacted indirectly. And they intervened in private property, because this is private property, to pull out a potential enemy. And I'd like to inform you that we have an exchange rate system. That is, the government detains dollars and approves of them or not. And if there are imports, it decides whether or not it is necessary to give this product to Venezuelans. And I know in small quantities certain products have been brought in, but I'm sure that when control has greater control of internet and media, of social networks, these will no longer be imported massively, because it will be not only, according to Chavez, be unnecessary, but it will be a potential danger.
I'm not sure. There are many dynamics at play right now. And one of the key ones is that you find that there's a lot of internet access in Zimbabwe, and there's a lot of activity. You go to chat rooms, you go to Facebook, you go to Twitter, you find that Zimbabweans are really engaged in terms of what is happening politically in the country. You feel the anger, you feel the anxiety. But I think what is missing now is some kind of rallying call in terms of the issue that galvanizes, that consolidates that anger into something that can produce something. Zimbabwe, is made up not just of Shonas, but we are different ethnic groups. And if there's anything that the MDC has managed to do over the years, it's to get everybody, regardless of their ethnic grouping, to be mobilized around different issues. So what is happening right now, I think there's an indirect mobilization of the people by the state itself, because it's mobilizing the people. The more that they are persecuting, the more the anger is rising, the more you go on Facebook and on Twitter. I think that they are really creating, once again, a solid foundation against themselves of a people. What are the issues that are going to unite Zimbabweans? Perhaps the issue of violence, because Zimbabweans by their nature are not a violent people. They don't like violence. They don't like violence in communities, in the rural areas or in the cities. And then still on Facebook, we've had one arrest a week ago, I think, of somebody who posted a very polite, he was responding to a post by somebody on Facebook. But anyway, he was arrested, and I think he's being charged with one of these dubious charges that the state is using against activists. So again, you know, the post-Egyptian moment means also the dictatorship knows the avenues that worked then. So you might not have, and you know, you are not going to replicate perhaps Egypt in Zimbabwe, because the enemy is aware of what happened in Tunisia, what the methods that the people used for mobilization and so on. But it seems contradictory, but on the other hand, really, you feel that the state is organizing the people against itself.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions?
Any other questions? Madam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Je vous entends parfois que vous allumiez votre...
We can hear you. Please turn on your microphone.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Dina Cooper. I'm a political science graduate student from New York. And I was wondering, much has been mentioned about elections, particularly with regards to Zimbabwe. But as we saw with Iran and Gaza, elections does not guarantee democracy. Is there any direct education being, taught to people, citizens, about longer-lasting democratic values beyond elections? Thank you.
One of the most wonderful things about Zimbabwe is that we've had a society, we've had a country with a very strong civic organizations. So in terms of the capacity for voter education, you're asking about voter education. In terms of the capacity to actually reach out to people, the capacity is there. It is enormous. So many of us are here in the diaspora. But in terms of the roadmap for elections, voter education has to be there, because the fear that is being instilled in the people, you will need people to go out on the ground in the communities explaining how they should vote and so on. So I have confidence in the civic organizations in Zimbabwe. We are a country that is coming from somewhere, and that is what makes you sad, because we are not coming from being a collapsed state. We've been, I think, one of the richest progressive countries on the African continent, the best health and education systems. We really prided ourselves because we were a jewel of Africa. So what is happening is a man-made disaster, which I believe that somebody has to tell this man that this disaster has to end now, and all these things will fall into place. And I think that the first, the roadmap for elections has to cover all that. I mean, you're also talking of healing. These are people who I'm blessed to be here. I have gone for trauma counseling. I have gone through so many processes to help me to heal, to help me to debrief and so on. But you have a nation that has been under siege over the past 10 years again and again and again. So where do you put in the healing efforts? I know under the government of national unity, a lot has been happening in terms of reconciling communities and bringing them back together again. So the capacity by Zimbabweans to actually carry out an election that each and every Zimbabwean will be accorded the right information to be able to vote correctly, it is there. Our issue is not even about capacity, but the issue is to do with the man-made disaster.
Je vous remercie. On va prendre la dernière.
Thank you. The last question now. I see your hand's been up for a while, sir. We can't hear you. Please turn on your microphone. Thank you for giving me the floor. I'd like to take advantage of this moment to thank Mr. Rodriguez and Madame Kwinjeh and Madame Thanh for her presentation. I would also like to briefly comment on an important point in my eyes, that is prisoners who are accused of rebellion who are still imprisoned or camps, have worked work camps in Vietnam. I'd like to talk to you about Mr. Nguyen Thanh and his family. And Mr. Nguyen Van Ly. Nguyen Thanh is a Democrat who was judged as on the 30th of March 2007 for political activities that were peaceful. He was accused of disseminating propaganda against the state, this infamous law, 88, and sentenced to 5 years of prison. His children were aggressed brutally, but the government has not stopped there. They're harassing their children as well. And in the 22nd appeal in March, the father of Nguyen Van Ly said his two daughters work in the accounting department of a company, and the obligatories have forced them to leave. And as the police has been throwing stones on their windows and have aggressed them in the street, in their home, and now they have put them on the ground and undressed them. So you see that young women are how women are being treated in Vietnam. This is a dictatorial regime. They undressed the other daughters of Mr. Nguyen Thanh 4 times, and this is Mr. Nguyen Thanh's situation as well as that of his daughters. Also, the pro-racist party in Vietnam is a subject I'd like to bring up. Mr. Nguyen Phan was sentenced to 6 years of prison in March at the same time as Mr. Nguyen Thanh, because he was accused of propaganda against the state. But the communist power imprisoned him, actually, to gag him, so that he wouldn't ask for greater freedom in Vietnam, and because he denounced anti-constitutional measures in Vietnam against the law of the country. Thank you for this additional information. We would like to remind you that you can ask the panelists any questions that you may have, and I would like to thank you all the speakers and all those who have raised questions for the quality of their comments. Thank you.